An October evening crept into the city with the silent steps of rain, enveloping it in a chilly grey haze, like a secret woven from premonitions and unspoken words. Raindrops drummed insistently on the roof of Martin's black Mercedes, echoing the nervous rhythm of his thoughts. He sat parked outside the upscale restaurant, Moonlight, a name that promised much, stealing glances at his watch as if trying to urge time forward. Memories of recent events played in his mind like a stuck record, leading him to this absurd, almost surreal situation. Samantha Campbell. Until recently, that name had been just a line in the list of employees in the analytics department, a quiet shadow gliding through the office corridors, perpetually hunched over stacks of papers, hidden behind old-fashioned glasses and shapeless cardigans, a grey mouse, a fleeting faceless detail in the office landscape. Martin honestly hadn't noticed her much himself. Her presence was so unobtrusive that she had often seemed to blend into the furniture, dissolving into the monotonous work atmosphere. Everything changed because of a lucrative contract their company nearly lost due to a crucial error in the calculations. It was this unremarkable Samantha who, like a fairy from the wings, discovered the critical inaccuracy just an hour before the fateful presentation. While the rest of the staff panicked, she calmly recalculated all the data, saving the multi-million-dollar deal with a wave of her invisible wand. The director, overjoyed, immediately ordered a celebration. Martin, as the project manager, was supposed to attend this corporate event, but instead he did something that surprised even himself. A man accustomed to rational decisions and calculated actions. He invited Samantha to dinner. "I think you deserve special thanks," Martin said, astonished by his own impulsiveness. Her reaction was bewildering. She looked at him as if he had spoken in the language of a distant, unknown planet. Her eyes, behind thick glasses, seemed enormous, filled with confusion and disbelief. "I don't know," she murmured, nervously fidgeting with the edge of her modest jacket. Her thin fingers trembled slightly, and Martin felt a strange, unfamiliar sensation, a mix of burning curiosity and a sudden desire to unravel the mystery hidden behind her unremarkable appearance. "Let's meet at Moonlight, tomorrow at 8 p.m. I'll reserve a table," he said, with unexpected confidence, as if obeying an inner voice. His words sounded firm, but deep down a slight exciting anticipation stirred. And now he sat in his car, watching the blurred silhouettes of passers-by through the rain-streaked window. 7:45 p.m. Would she not come? Disappointment pricked his heart like a painful needle. Suddenly, his phone vibrated with a new message, an unknown number. "I'm inside. The table is under your name." Overcome by a sudden surge of surprise, Martin rushed out of the car and hurried towards the glowing lights of the restaurant. Stepping inside, he was enveloped by the warm, inviting atmosphere of soft light and hushed voices. The aroma of exquisite dishes mingled with the faint scent of expensive perfumes, creating a sense of refined luxury. He scanned the faces of the patrons, trying to spot the familiar, unremarkable figure. "Mr. Allen?" The elegant maitre d' addressed him politely. "Your companion is already waiting for you." Martin followed him, almost entranced, weaving between tables shrouded in dim light, and then he stopped. At a table by the panoramic window, through which the blurred lights of the nighttime city could be seen, sat a woman. But this was not the Samantha he had expected to see. A slender figure in a perfectly fitting black dress that sensually revealed her elegant shoulders. Soft waves of chestnut hair seemed to radiate an inner glow, framing a face with fine, aristocratic features. And her eyes, oh, those eyes, deep, the colour of dark amber. They shone with an intensity he had never seen before. In their depths flickered confidence and a slight, almost imperceptible irony, as if she had held a secret inaccessible to him. "Samantha?" he heard himself say, his voice hoarse and uncertain, as if he couldn't quite believe his eyes. His heart skipped a beat. She graced him with a soft, captivating smile, and that same enigmatic spark flashed in her eyes again. "Yes, it's me. Please, have a seat." Martin sat down, still stunned by the transformation. He tried to reconcile this dazzling stranger with the quiet, unnoticeable girl from the office, and failed completely. The change was so astonishing that he felt utterly lost in space and time. Her presence at the table seemed to create an invisible field of magnetism, and he couldn't take his eyes off her. "You look different," he finally muttered, feeling a slight flush rise to his cheeks. She merely smiled softly in response. "A work suit and an outfit for a moonlit dinner are quite different things, don't you think?" "Of course." Martin nodded automatically, still trying to reconcile the image of the quiet colleague with this confident, elegant stranger sitting across from him. "Honestly, I'm a bit overwhelmed." "It shows." A mischievous spark flashed in her eyes. "The sommelier has already suggested a good wine. Will you join me?" Martin nodded silently, still under her spell. The evening had taken an entirely unexpected turn, and he suddenly realized that there was much more exciting in Samantha Campbell than he had ever imagined. Under the dim lights of the Moonlight restaurant, he saw her in an entirely new light, and this feeling took hold of his thoughts, promising an unpredictable and intriguing development of events. He sensed with every fibre of his being that something new, exciting, and full of captivating mysteries awaited him. Samantha turned out to be a remarkable conversationalist, intelligent, well-read, with a subtle sense of humour that kept slipping into her remarks, making Martin smile involuntarily. She spoke about literature, music, distant countries Martin had dreamed of but never visited, and in each topic she demonstrated an unexpected depth of knowledge. "How is it that we've worked together for over a year and I know almost nothing about you?" the man blurted out as the waiter silently placed exquisitely served plates in front of them. She took a small sip of wine before answering. "Did you ever try to find out?" Her question was not accusatory, but it hit the mark. "Probably not," Martin admitted honestly, feeling a slight pang of guilt. "But now I'm genuinely interested." "And with what exactly?" the woman asked. "Everything," Martin said impulsively, feeling a sudden desire to fill in all the blanks in his understanding of this enigmatic woman. "For example, why do you look like a grey—" He stumbled over his words. "Why do I look like a grey mouse at work?" she finished for him, and Martin nodded silently. "You know, Martin," she called him by his name for the first time, and it sounded special. "Sometimes being unnoticed is a big advantage. People don't treat you as a threat. They don't compete with you. They don't even notice you. It gives you the freedom to observe, analyse and draw your own conclusions without being distracted by external appearances." "But isn't it upsetting?" Martin asked sincerely. "I mean, you clearly can make an entirely different impression." Samantha tilted her head slightly, studying Martin with her piercing gaze. "And why would I want that? So my male colleagues would work less and stare at me more? So the women would whisper behind my back and look for reasons to be petty? No, I came to the company to work, not to participate in a beauty contest. Martin pondered, her gaze absently tracing the flickering candlelights on the table. There was a bitter yet familiar truth in her words about the corporate jungle, where intrigue and unspoken rules often lurked behind the facade of success. As a man in a leadership position, accustomed to clear hierarchies, he could afford to overlook the hidden struggles for influence. But Samantha, in her quiet confidence, there was an inner strength, a wisdom, as if she observed this game from the sidelines, seeing all its undercurrents. And yet, tonight you decided to lift the veil, to show a side of yourself that you usually hide. Martin remarked with a slight smile, his eyes never leaving her extraordinary gaze. Because tonight I'm not within the office walls, where unwritten rules reign, she replied simply, a hint of playfulness in her voice. And, I admit, I was curious to see your reaction. How do you find the result? A mischievous spark flashed in her eyes, as if she knew something he didn't. Priceless and overwhelming, Martin exclaimed involuntarily, and in response he heard her soft, melodic laughter, which seemed to dissolve into the cosy atmosphere of the restaurant. This laughter, open and sincere, instantly transformed her, adding an unexpected lightness and femininity to her demeanour. Their conversation flowed effortlessly, like two streams merging into one river. With each passing minute, Martin felt himself delving deeper into Samantha's new unexplored world, complex, rich, filled with subtle emotions and unexpected passions. It was nothing like the stereotypical image of the quiet colleague he had once imagined. Tell me something about yourself that no one at work knows, Martin suggested, eagerly awaiting her response, as the waiter silently placed a fragrant dessert adorned with fresh berries before them. Samantha paused for a moment, her gaze thoughtful, as if she were sifting through her most cherished secrets. I'm writing a book. A detective novel. Really? What's it about? Martin asked, his curiosity piqued even further. Corporate espionage, industrial secrets, and the murder of a CEO, she said calmly, that enigmatic spark flickering in her eyes once more. She said it so matter-of-factly, as if discussing the weather, that Martin wasn't sure if she was joking or not. And who's the murderer? He asked with a smile, feeling a new intriguing connection forming between them. A modest employee from the analytics department whom no one notices, she replied with a sly smile. The perfect cover, isn't it? Her voice held both humour and a hidden depth. They laughed, but something in her piercing gaze made Martin wonder. What if there was more to her words than just the fantasy of an aspiring writer? What if this seemingly fragile woman held far more secrets and unexpected facets than he could imagine? And you? She asked suddenly, pulling Martin from his thoughts. Her gaze was soft yet penetrating. What don't your colleagues know about you? Martin froze, caught off guard. Against the backdrop of her surprising revelation, his own carefully guarded secrets seemed trivial and insignificant. I'm afraid I'm not that interesting, he admitted with a slight smile, feeling a strange excitement from her intense gaze. The usual stuff. Work, occasional meet-ups with friends, the gym on weekends. I don't believe you, she said softly, her eyes searching his, as if trying to peer into the depths of his soul. There was a hint of doubt or challenge in her gaze, and it made Martin's heart beat a little faster. Deep within every person lies a secret, carefully guarded from prying eyes. Under Samantha's long, piercing gaze, Martin felt a traitorous wave of embarrassment colour his cheeks with a soft blush. He suddenly felt awkward, as if he, a confident man who knew his worth, was now a boy caught doing something forbidden. "All right, there is something," he admitted, feeling a slight smile tug at the corner of his lips. "I collect antique pocket watches. I have 36 of them." She graced him with a soft, understanding smile, as if behind this momentary weakness she glimpsed something deeply personal and touching. And Martin suddenly realised that behind the strict lines of business suits and the endless stream of important meetings lay a whole, unexplored world. A world of personal passions, unfulfilled dreams, and small but significant weaknesses that made each person unique. After dinner he offered to walk Samantha home. The rain, as if tired of its autumnal tears, finally stopped, and they strolled leisurely through the quiet streets, enjoying the sudden coolness. The night city breathed freshness, washed by the rain. The cool air was filled with the intoxicating scent of wet asphalt, mixed with the pungent aroma of fallen leaves, creating a special, melancholic yet romantic atmosphere. "You know, Martin," Samantha's soft, thoughtful voice broke the silence that enveloped them like an invisible veil as they passed an old park with rain-darkened benches and golden leaves rustling underfoot. "I'm grateful to you for this evening. It was unusual." "I should be thanking you," Martin replied sincerely, feeling something new and exciting stirring in his soul. "I haven't spent time like this in a long time. So interesting and easy." She suddenly stopped in the middle of the sidewalk, her direct and open gaze meeting his. In the light of the sparse street lamps, casting intricate shadows on the wet asphalt, her eyes seemed even deeper and more expressive, filled with some unspoken emotion. "Can I ask you something?" she asked softly, a hint of uncertainty in her voice, as if she were about to do something very important. "Why did you invite me? Really, I've been thinking about it all evening." Indeed, why? This question echoed in Martin's mind. Out of simple politeness? As a gesture of gratitude for the saved project? Out of a sense of duty to an employee who turned out to be so helpful? Or was there something more, some unconscious attraction, a sudden interest in this mysterious woman who, in one evening, had shattered all his previous perceptions of her? "Honestly," Martin admitted, feeling a slight flutter in his chest, "I don't know completely. It was an impulse. Something inside me told me that behind this work facade, behind this apparent modesty, there was a completely different person. And I wanted to know the real you. And as it turned out, I was right." Samantha sighed and said quietly, "Perhaps you saw what I allowed you to see." "So is there more about you that I don't know?" he asked with a light, promising smile, feeling an invisible thread of mutual interest forming between them, woven from curiosity and budding attraction. "Much more, Martin," Samantha replied enigmatically, her smile full of promises and unspoken words, making his heart beat a little faster. "For example, that your project is far from the first major project I've saved from failure, and that your deputy, Peterson, has been trying to sabotage your work for quite some time." Martin fell silent, stunned, trying to process this unexpected revelation. He couldn't fathom how this quiet woman could know such things. "Surprised?" Her voice was calm, but there was a firm conviction in her words. "He hopes to take your place. He carefully hides important data. subtly changes key figures in reports and secretly turns the team against you. How do you— Martin began, feeling a wave of disbelief and confusion rising within him. I told you, Samantha reminded him, continuing to walk slowly down the wet alley, as if discussing something entirely mundane. Martin had to almost run to keep up with her. When no one notices you, you can see many interesting things that are usually hidden from prying eyes. All these months, I've been quietly correcting his mistakes, thinking that you would notice eventually. That presentation was just a more obvious case that couldn't be hidden. Martin's thoughts raced in chaos. Peterson, his deputy, a man he considered, if not a friend, then at least a loyal colleague. And Samantha, this quiet, unnoticeable Samantha, had been silently countering his intrigues all this time, protecting him from betrayal. Why didn't you tell me sooner? Martin asked bitterly, feeling deceived and vulnerable. Samantha cast him a penetrating glance, her eyes filled with wise sadness. Would you have believed me, Martin? A grey mouse from the analytics department, accusing your influential deputy of sabotage? Martin remained silent, forced to acknowledge her point. Most likely he would have dismissed her words, not giving them the attention they deserved. I have evidence, she added softly, her voice filled with steady confidence. If you're interested, of course. Of course I'm interested, Martin replied hoarsely, still trying to grasp the depth of the truth that had been revealed to him. Turning off the bustling street into a quiet alley shrouded in evening twilight, Martin involuntarily slowed his pace. The old house they approached held the charm of time and seemed to conceal many untold stories. I live here, Samantha said, casting a fleeting glance at the darkened facade, with a barely perceptible note of thoughtfulness in her voice. Her fingers lightly traced the rough surface of the old wooden door. I can show you the documents right now. Martin nodded, feeling curiosity overcoming caution. Her apartment was as much of a revelation as she was, an unexpected oasis of style and comfort behind the stern exterior of the old house. High ceilings breathed spaciousness, and enormous bookshelves filled with leather-bound volumes spoke of the rich inner world of the owner. The air was filled with the faint scent of coffee and something else, something elusive and feminine, stirring. Please, have a seat, Samantha offered, with a soft smile before disappearing into the study. Her movements were fluid and confident, like a cat's. She returned quickly, holding a thick folder filled with printouts and screenshots. Her gaze was serious and focused as she handed the documents to Martin. Here, she said quietly, everything is in here. Original data, altered versions, dates of changes, IP addresses. Martin immersed himself in the materials, feeling the web of intrigue tightening with each new page. Numbers, dates, reports, everything pointed to a disheartening picture. It became clear that Peterson was not just making mistakes, he was systematically and methodically sabotaging the project. And he was doing it with diabolical ingenuity, cleverly setting up Martin to take the fall if the project failed. Why? Martin exclaimed, setting aside the last page, feeling a wave of indignation and confusion rising in his chest. He looked up at Samantha, who had been silently watching him, seeking an answer to the question that tormented him. Why have you been helping me all this time? Samantha sat across from him, her posture straight and open, her gaze piercing and honest. Because you are a good leader, Martin, she said softly, yet her words carried weight and conviction. Fair, intelligent, dedicated to your work. There aren't many like you. Martin felt a pang of guilt. In the whirlwind of work problems and intrigues, he had completely overlooked this woman, who, it turned out, saw in him what he sometimes failed to see in himself. "But I didn't even notice you," he murmured, embarrassed. A slight smile touched her lips, adding to her enigmatic allure. "It didn't matter," she calmly replied. "I value professionalism, not attention to my person." Martin looked at her, trying to piece together all the fragmented parts into a single picture. A modest employee, an unexpected ally, a perceptive analyst. "And who are you, Samantha Campbell?" he asked directly, no longer able to contain his curiosity. She smiled again, only slightly detached and infinitely feminine. "I am whoever I need to be in different circumstances," she replied, and there was a hint of irony in her voice. "As we are all, aren't we?" At that very moment, the silence of the apartment was shattered by the sharp ring of a telephone. Martin started, feeling awkward at the intrusion into this intimate atmosphere. "The director? At this hour?" he muttered, picking up the receiver. "Yes, Mr. Murphy?" The director's voice on the line was tense and agitated. "Martin, get to the office immediately. We have serious problems with the server. All the data for the project has disappeared. Peterson is accusing you of negligence." Martin looked away from the phone and looked at Samantha. Hanging overheard fragments of his conversation, she had already risen and was heading resolutely toward the door. Her eyes burned with a firm, decisive spark. "Let's go," she said in a tone that brooked no argument. "I know what happened." And at that moment, Martin felt that with this enigmatic woman by his side, he was ready to face any challenge. As they rushed to the office, cutting through the morning mist, Samantha calmly explained her suspicions to Martin. Her voice was confident, as if she had already unravelled Peterson's devious plan. "He probably decided to go all in, destroy all the data and pin the blame on you," she said, her eyes never leaving the road. Martin listened, astonished by her insight. How could she anticipate the actions of this slippery character so accurately? "But he didn't know," Samantha added with a barely perceptible smirk, "that I had the foresight to create backup copies of all the materials, and I kept evidence of his interference." At that moment, a feeling of deep gratitude and something else, still undefined, stirred in Martin's heart. At the office, they were already expected. The director, pale as a sheet, nervously fidgeted with his tie, while Peterson, on the other hand, exuded smug confidence, as if the outcome was already decided in his favour. "Ah, there you are," Peterson sneered, casting a disdainful glance at Martin. "And Miss Campbell with you? How quaint." His tone was condescending, as if he considered them both mere pawns in his game. "Martin, the situation is critical," the director said anxiously, his gaze darting between Martin and Samantha, as if seeking salvation. "Tomorrow is the presentation of the results, and all the data—" "The data is intact," Samantha interjected calmly, gracefully producing a flash drive from her bag. Her confidence stood in stark contrast to the panic in the room, as if she held not just a data storage device, but the key to resolving this entire tangled mess. "Here are complete copies of all the project materials." Peterson blinked in surprise, his smug smile faltering. "And something else," Samantha added, pulling out a second flash drive, her gaze slicing through Peterson like a blade. "Evidence of who and why deleted the original files." A tense silence hung in the room, broken only by the director's nervous breathing. The next 2 hours passed in a blur. Restoring the data, the director's stammering explanations, Peterson's shock and subsequent dismissal. It all unfolded as if in slow motion. Colleagues expressed their gratitude to Martin, sighing in relief. And throughout it all, Samantha worked by his side, efficiently, precisely, without unnecessary words or fuss. It was then, in that tense atmosphere of struggle and victory, that Martin saw her truly for the first time. Not the grey mouse she had once seemed, nor the femme fatale of his fleeting fantasies, but a top-notch professional with a sharp mind, iron will, and an inner strength that was so attractive. When it was all over, it was well past midnight. They left the empty office together, exhausted, but with a sense of duty fulfilled. "Thank you," Martin said sincerely as they stopped by his car. "You saved not only the project but also my career." "No need to thank me," she replied, her gaze direct and serious. "Just be more attentive to those around you in the future. Appearances can be deceiving in both directions." "Lessons learned," Martin nodded, feeling Samantha's words sink deep into his soul. "Can I ask one last question?" "Of course." "Tomorrow at work, will you be that grey mouse again?" She smiled enigmatically, a mischievous spark in her eyes. "Who knows? Maybe it's time for a new role." Martin watched as she disappeared into the night, confident, mysterious, elusive. A woman who had taught him a lesson that went far beyond professional relationships. Never judge a book by its cover, especially if that cover is a carefully crafted illusion. The next morning, Samantha appeared in the office wearing an elegant suit, light makeup, and no glasses. She confidently walked past her astonished colleagues to her workspace, and within a week she took on the role of Martin's deputy, the very position previously held by Peterson. Martin never again used the term grey mouse, always remembering that behind the most unassuming exterior could lie the most wonderful story. A story of how a modest employee became his saviour, wise adviser, and the very woman with whom he felt truly happy. Over time, their professional relationship evolved into something more, filled with mutual respect, admiration, and that quiet, deep love that every woman dreams of. And although Samantha could still surprise him with unexpected facets of her personality, Martin knew one thing for sure. This remarkable woman, who once seemed inconspicuous, had become the brightest light in his life, and they lived happily ever after, cherishing every moment given by fate.